huge order, leaving My Pillow with a ton of extra My Pillows. You know what? That's their loss and your gain. My Pillow is offering the classic collection of wholesale prices, only $19.98 for the standard My Pillow, but it gets even better. What are you talking about, Mike? How does it get better than that? You get the queen size My Pillow for $24.98. You go to mypillow.com, use promo code Badlands. It's a Badlands night. We got to do a plug for them. We're very, very happy to do so as well. And I use My Pillow. Like I said, it started off as a knee elevator for my blood tests, because I lay down when I have blood drawn every 5 years. And now I just put it under my neck like everybody else. So you can use it as a blood draw pillow. You can use it as just a comfy pillow, whatever you want to do. MyPillow.com, promo code Badlands. Okay? Go there, get yourself a pillow, damn it. Please go do it. Anyway, what else do we have? That's really it. I just also want to let you know that we have a new endeavor on Monday night. Monday night, we're going to be getting together for our book club again, and that book club is going to focus around Stephen King's novella, The Body, which is where the deer scene comes from. Ladies and gentlemen, it's chapters 1 through 9. Get involved. If you're a monthly sponsor, especially because it's members only, get involved. We have the link to the PDF in there. You don't even have to buy the novella, even though it's so great to hold it in your hands and read through it. Get involved. That's at 9 o'clock afterwards, after the show on Monday. The guest list for next week is looking fantastic going into August as well. What do you want me to say? Not much. Anything else I had to say before we get started? No. That's it. I'm looking forward to the second half of the show as well. You know, Molly from Keto Brainz said that she was going to do another one of those ridiculous giveaways. Hopefully she sends me the information on that before the end of the night, because if that is something that we can have live over the weekend, like more of those vibrating plates. Some of you guys got that vibrating plate. You said it's really incredible. I got to get myself one. Wake up, throw myself on a vibrating plate. Then you're ready for the day. Then you're ready for your coffee. Anyway, let's get this show started, because I can't wait to bring our guest on, and there is really just so much to talk about that I fear we won't have enough time. So let's go. Let's get it going.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's rock!
65 to 70 around there, you know? And then F is just like, to hell with it, man. You're like F minus by the time you get to 24%. You didn't even get a grade. You're just like, you just got the red note at the top of your paper that said, come see me. And then like they start interrogating you to make sure that everything's okay at home, and you don't have bruises on your neck or something like that. Jeez Louise. Yeah, send your kids to public school. I mean, if they won't be socialized. How are they going to get socialized? Man, especially when you're lumped. That's the whole thing there too. You say, well, yeah, it might be a weak system, but if the individual is strong, no, you know what? The individual gets destroyed. I mean, you have to work extra just to keep your morale up when you get pulled down an average by that kind of nonsense that's around you. We got to talk about this, man. We got to talk about this. I'll keep that on ice. We're nowhere near done with that topic. And away we go. So listen, I want to get into our main topic now. And I'm going to introduce our new friend of the show, Chris Shelton. I'm sure it's not going to be it can't be. With everything that there is to talk about, Scientology is one thing. But when you go outside the bounds of Scientology into greater aspects of what's playing out in society, I mean, there's all types of cults. There's all types of ways that people are initiated into groupthink and mass formation psychosis kind of situations where we can just the same human psychology that applies when you analyze what happened at Jonestown, or the Twin Flames situation that everybody was able to watch on Netflix not too long ago, applies to what is an accredited religion like Scientology. And, Chris Shelton is a writer, a podcaster, YouTuber, cult researcher. He used to be a Scientologist, escaped in 2013. In realizing just how deep the rabbit hole of manipulation and deceit of Scientology was, Chris created videos outlining how Scientology works. He then began talking to psychologists, sociologists, and former cult survivors across the spectrum as part of his own recovery, and this led to completing a master's degree in psychology of coercive control. Coercion and abusive practices are routine in far too many religions and self-practices, and Chris's mission is to inform the public about how that manipulation works. He's here with us today. Chris, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on.
Hi, thanks for having me. I always love talking about this stuff.
Well, you do a great job, and I hope more people start flocking to your YouTube, because you have a nice little subscriber base there, but you talk about very interesting things, and you're in a unique position to talk about it as well, because I mean, we're looking at, as far as your involvement with Scientology as an organization, do I have this right? 27 years?
Yeah, that's right. And that was just my formal involvement with it, because actually I was raised with it since I was about 4 years old. So it was always in my life.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How did your time with the organization begin? So before you are, I don't know when, what official introduction into the organization looks like, for us Catholics, we baptize our babies within, sometimes 3 months, or my daughter was 2 years, whatever. But I don't know how much you just observed before it was, okay, Chris, now you're in it. What's that like?
Oh, yeah. It was a process just like we're being raised in any religious household, where this is your normal. L. Ron Hubbard is a genius philosopher, researcher, writer, and figured all this wonderful stuff out. And yes, spacefaring societies are real. And yes, you are an immortal spiritual being who will live forever and have lived a near infinite amount of time in the past. These were the sorts of things that were laid on me as a kid that I just accepted as this is the truth, because of course my parents and all of my parents' friends were Scientologists. And so this was the culture, I guess you could say, of growing up in Scientology. And there were various teachings and practices of Scientology we can maybe get into that made my life a little unique, but I still went to public school. I was raised in Southern California. And so I was still around regular people doing regular things, but with this sort of twisted, version of reality in my head the whole time. So that's kind of what it was like growing up with it.
Well, I already have a couple of questions about your parents and how those relationships evolved or devolved. And I'm going to save that for later on, because sure. I just don't want to put the cart before the horse. And you brought up something else, since you already brought L. Ron Hubbard into the frame here. This is before Dianetics, already a very prominent pulp fiction writer. And what I never understood is, and perhaps you can just do this for us now, what is Dianetics and how did it transform into Scientology? Like, how did we get that and then go to formalized religious structure?
Absolutely. The short version is that 1950, L. Ron Hubbard writes a book Dianetics, the quote unquote modern science of mental health. And this was a direct stab at psychology and psychiatry in an effort to sort of, muscle in on that territory with this self-help technique where people could work together, they could pair up and counsel, or audit is the word they used in Dianetics and Scientology. You could audit one another and address past trauma and relieve yourself of that trauma. And the promises were huge. It was no more getting sick. This could cure leukemia. This could cure cancer. You could have perfect eyesight. You could have perfect memory. People, really went in on this book because it was making some very tall promises, and they were very hopeful for this. 1950 was, a very different time from now. So this book took off, and Hubbard suddenly found himself at the head of a self-help movement that through 1950 was making all kinds of money, and little groups and organizations started up to, sort of propagate this and keep it going. And Hubbard proposed that he had new techniques and faster ways of doing it, and he was researching, constantly, he said, so that this would be an evolving science, and it was proposed as a science. Well, once the scientists got hold of it and started reviewing it across the boards, they started publishing articles in, Time and Life and popular magazines saying there was absolutely nothing scientific about this at all. There had been no case studies, no peer review, no, nothing at all that was objective review of the Dianetics techniques. And people started having problems and issues with it. And when Hubbard presented publicly the very first clear, which is the state you're supposed to achieve with Dianetics, where you have all this perfect memory and perfect recall and everything, she couldn't even remember the color of L. Ron Hubbard's tie when he turned his back. So so it was sort of this big flop. And Hubbard was not an organizational genius. And so he was making money hand over fist and spending it just as fast as he was getting it, living the high life. He had never had money like this before. So by 1951, early 51, Dianetics is bankrupt and in the tank. And there were a lot of controversial things that happened at that time. He was bailed out. He bankrupted it again. And so by 1952, he realizes that once he is being pursued by legal authorities at this point for making medical claims that he can cure things that he couldn't cure, this is actually against the law to do this kind of thing. He realized, well, in religion, you can make any claim you want, and it's faith-based. It's not science-based. So he sort of pivoted, and he created Scientology out of the ashes of Dianetics. And he actually, because he bankrupted it twice, he lost the rights to Dianetics. And so that's why he had to come up with a new subject and a new word and a new language for it. And that was the beginning of the Church of Scientology in 1953. And from that point forward, it was a religious movement. And he started making claims about man's spiritual nature, and it kind of went from there.
That's a very, very concise way of putting it all together, and I can now see it. I can see the business charlatan movements from one thing to another, and essentially the creation of shell companies. And it's funny, those Pulp Fiction writers, they do like to spend it as much as they make it, and that's nutty there. But when I look at when you said self-help. The one term I had come up with before, because you had mentioned unconscious memories and the whole concept of auditing unconscious memories, engrams. Is that what you call them?
That's right. That's exactly the word. Those are specific moments, Hubbard says, there's no science behind this, okay? But the idea in Dianetics is that you have experienced incidents or events with pain and unconsciousness as part of them. You get bit by a dog, you get knocked out, these kind of things. And those memories are subconsciously stored in a part of your mind that he calls the reactive mind, and it comes back later when you're sort of triggered by things that are similar to what happened in the event, called an engram. And the idea with the auditing is that you will go back and recall those incidents and sort of relive them. And by doing so, you will sort of let go of or release the trauma and the stress and the pain of all of that. And it will be simply another memory for you. And it turns out that this is something that Hubbard actually copied and pasted from Freud and Breuer back, who gave lectures about this at the turn of the century. And he repackaged it with a little bit of hypnotism added in. And that's really what Dianetics actually is.
I mean, when you think about, I've covered MK Ultra and all types of mind control, suggestive mind control, hypnosis techniques on this show over the years. And when you combine all those, the idea of clearing out traumas that you didn't know were there, that don't really have a face, they're unconscious, mental rewiring, the auditing of memories with the help of essentially a counselor. Man, oh man, that does sound like some CIA operation. But this was just all one man's imagination. Did he really have no sponsors? Was this not like one of those government LSD experiments, but with religion instead? Nothing?
No. There have been various conspiracy theories over the years, and I debunk them as necessary. But no, Hubbard was really operating on his own belief system, on his own ideas, and for his own aggrandizement. He was all about him. And so the idea that Hubbard would work with the government is a little funny, because in his lectures and in his writings, he hated the government. He hated paying taxes. He hated anything to do with any of this. And he was, if we're going to, if you really want to go into the weeds, he was almost constantly on the run from various governments. So no, there's no conspiracy there.
Okay. Yeah, I have. There's a few questions that have come in that are kind of in that same vein, but I'll wait for those for a little while, because we're really on a run right here. So as far as auditing goes, now you're in, okay, like you said, you came up, your family was involved in the organization. You knew nothing other than that. And now you're in it. You're in on the ground level. And there starts 27 years of formal membership there.
Yeah, when I was 15 is when that 27-year mark starts, because I was in high school. And that was the point when my dad said, why don't you go down to the local church? And this was in Santa Barbara, California at this point, and check it out for yourself. And that's when I went down and did their personality test and had my own sort of what you might call conversion moment.
Okay.
My own epiphany that this is what I needed in my life. And and the funny thing is that it was so stupid, because I went in there as this kind of nerdy, geeky 15-year-old high school student who couldn't get dates. I mean, I was just, my head was always in a book. I was just the original nerd. And the thing that they said they could help me with was talking to girls and getting dates.
Good. Oh,
and I was sold. I was like, shut up and take my money.
Most kids, that's the whole thing there. Most teenagers are like, what? You can get me laid? Oh man. See, here's, and that's what I wonder about is the sales techniques. And you said 15 is when it got kicked off. Were you prior to 15 ever audited?
Yes, I was. I had Scientology processes done on me, and I used Scientology methods like to study or to communicate. But this is when I started really doing the formal class work. There's two things Scientology offers. There's classes, and there is the auditing. And so it's kind of those two mainline activities are what the Church of Scientology delivers to people. And let me please say at the beginning, since I often fail to say this at the beginning, it's a money-making scam. It's there to make money. It's not there to really, help people or make the world a better place.
Yeah, but you want to know something with, again, well, obviously the world a better place, but when people, and you know this obviously, but when people put everything they got into it and they believe it, whereas the higher ups understand that they are running an incredibly vicious operation that requires the dedication of hearts and minds and open wallets to keep going. That's just we start getting into something that is a spiritual exchange in many ways, and you give up so much of yourself. It's a spiritual as well as a secular slavery.
You put it exactly right, and it's purposeful. Hubbard designed it to be that. The current leader of Scientology, David Miscavige, is somebody who also grew up in Scientology, in a Scientology family, and is a true believer. And there has been lots of conjecture over the years as to how in on the con of it David Miscavige is. But at this point, my thinking is that he is that he really thinks that the stuff is real and that what Hubbard wrote is true, and his job is to expand it and keep it going. But he's just so bloody incompetent at his job that he just can't seem to get it done. Which is kind of funny to me because Scientology is shrinking at this point.
Well, it doesn't get anything but bad press and a lot of ridicule. I want to get into that in a second, but real quick,
sure.
Can you give us a little bit of an example of what it's like to be audited, and then what it's like to be on the auditing side of that arrangement? Like when you are the counselor, you are the guide, or what is it like to be in the chair, and what is it like to be the one who is, I don't know, tinkering with somebody else's mind?
Yeah, it's a big subject. But let me try my best here. It looks an awful lot like a therapy session, but it's only in appearance that it looks like that because, for example, the auditor is seated at a desk, and the person being audited, which is called a pre-clear because they're not yet clear, is the person getting the auditing. And the auditor sits with the door to leave the room behind him, and it's locked. And you can't leave until the auditor says you can leave. The auditor is 100% responsible for everything that goes on in the session. And the session is run beginning to end on the auditor's commands. And the auditor is the one who says when it's done. That's where it takes a major departure from anything like therapy. Therapy is not run that way at all. That would be considered grossly unethical practice in psychology, but not in Scientology. And so the idea is there are lots and lots of different ways of doing auditing. It's not a one-size-fits-all practice. It's not individual for each person, but I'm just saying there's lots of different techniques applied. But let's talk about, for example, one form of auditing, which is called security checking or confessionals. And this is where this device called an e-meter is used. It's used in most auditing styles. And the e-meter is sort of, simply put, it's 1/3 of a lie detector. If you go on a polygraph or a lie detector, you're going to have your heart rate, your breathing, and your skin, what's called galvanic skin response measured. The e-meter only measures galvanic skin response. It's only measuring resistance to an electric circuit that's being run over your skin. But Scientologists think that that device, the e-meter, is capable of reading their thoughts and is reading their trauma. It's not, but that's what they are told it's what it's doing. And so there's a lot of false information given to people about how the mind works in Scientology.
And I have to imagine that sitting there and being interrogated by a higher up or a perceived authority figure inside of this organization is one thing. You're in a locked room. You're being guided through a session. The authority is vested completely in the auditor. But then you also have third-party technology monitoring you as well. So just the idea of, okay, I've got the human confrontation, and I've also got a machine that is here to assist the person in really diving into my being in some way. So
That's right.
That's one hell of a prop right there.
Oh, it is and you wouldn't believe how well it works. It is amazing. People see an electronic device, and if the needle on the dial moves, and they're told that that is moving because you thought a certain kind of thought or are remembering a certain kind of memory, they buy it. They buy right into it. And the e-meter convinces an awful lot of people that Scientology works. So the auditing process uses the meter. The auditor is watching the dial, asking questions, and the auditor believes in the e-meter too. This is not where everybody in the room believes in this whole process. So the auditor's job is to ask the questions in a confessional and get the pre-clear to confess his sins, or the special word they use in Scientology is his overts, the things that you've done that are immoral and or illegal. And so you'll be asked very sharp and very detailed and very personal questions. Full transparency is expected. There's an apparency of confidentiality, but everything you're saying is being written down in a worksheet for every single session that you're in. Very complete records are kept, and these go into folders, and those folders are numbered with your name on them. And many Scientologists have well over 100 of these folders of all their auditing that's ever been done on them. And so the church has these records. There's permanent records, and you sign legal documents before you can get auditing, stating that those records are the property of the church. They are not your property. You have no access to them, and you never will. So that's all part of the auditing process too. And because you believe that everybody's on your side and that this is all a good thing and everything is above the boards, that they would never use this information against you. But should you start questioning the church, speaking out against the church, you find that that information is not confidential at all, and they will use that however they want. Now, to get back to your question, so the process goes that you are asked a question. The meter is watched to see whether it reacts to the question or not. They don't care what you say. If you are asked a question like, have you ever stolen from the company you work for? Bing, the needle moves. Well, tell me what you stole from your company. But I didn't steal anything from my company. Well, let's just take a look and let's just see what's there. And let's go ahead and dig up what it is that you stole from your company. You're not believed. The meter is believed. And if you know how the meter works, you know what an incredible joke this is, because it's really just responding to, or could be responding to, your anxiety or your embarrassment, or the fact you're sitting there thinking, no, that's not what I did.
Now you're just obsessing over it. Yeah.
What's that?
You're just obsessing over it at that point, the stress alone.
That's right. Exactly. The meter is responding to sweat, muscle tension, nervous system responses, hormone responses. It's a physical device measuring your physical responses. But again, in Scientology, you're trained or told that this is all a spiritual reading, and that it's measuring your spirit, or what they call a thetan. You are a thetan in Scientology, a spiritual entity. You are not your body. You are going to survive the death of your body, and you're going to go get another body and another one and another one. And you've lived over and over and over again. So your current incarnation is just like a suit of clothes that you wear. It's that kind of importance in Scientology. So the process goes that the auditor will get an answer to the question until the needle does certain things which tell the auditor, okay, now we're done with that, and we're going to move on to the next question, and the next, and the next. But often this involves not just getting the single answer to the question of what you stole from your job, but maybe if the needle doesn't do what it's supposed to, is there an earlier similar time you stole something from your job? And an earlier similar, this is called a chain of incidents. And you can go backwards in time to when you were 5 years old, maybe, when you stole an apple from Farmer John or something, right? And then maybe that doesn't clear it up. And is there an earlier similar overt of you stealing from your job? Oh, well, now I'm going to go into past lives. Oh, yes, I remember in a past life
Oh boy.
when I stole from my job. And this could go back, to past lives from millions of years ago. I mean, Scientology really doesn't have any limit on how far back you can go.
So
That's where past lives come up.
Stay right there then, because just before you were talking about, at my request, the evolution from Dianetics to religion. And of course, this is all something that has been crafted by a science fiction, pulp fiction writer.
That's right.
And at some point, and I would love to know where, because most people, especially my age, the first crash course we had in real, authentic Scientology beliefs was from South Park years ago. And,
that's right.
And so at which point do we start, where do Thetans come up? Who is Lord Xenu? Where does that come up, and where does it come into play?
Okay, cool. I'm glad you asked this, because it gives me an opportunity to say that while people watch South Park, and already, I'm no Scientology apologist. That's not where I'm coming from on this, but I want people to understand Xenu is the least important part of that whole thing that South Park talked about. There is a ladder, or what is referred to as a bridge, that you're crossing in Scientology to a state of higher spiritual awareness and ability, where you're basically being promised the carrot that you're chasing in Scientology is godhood. The idea is that as a spiritual being, you have devolved through all of these stress and trauma of all these lives that you've led, all the deaths you've experienced, all the things you've done. You have sort of depowered yourself down to the point where you don't even know you are a spiritual being anymore. You have no self-awareness of that. You think you're a body, you dork. So, so the idea is that in Scientology, you're going to rehabilitate your true spiritual nature, and you're going to rehabilitate your spiritual abilities. And ultimately in Scientology, and you're told this almost right from the beginning. I mean, very early on, you start learning about your nature, your spiritual nature, because that's the core belief of Scientology. And the idea is that through this auditing process, through hundreds or thousands of hours of this auditing of different kinds, you're going to cross this bridge or go up this ladder of, really, it's a ladder of indoctrination. You're being fed a lot of nonsense, but you're thinking that you're becoming freer and freer and freer. And as a result, you're supposed to regain actual spiritual superpowers, the ability to predict the future, to want something to happen, and then it just manifests because you wanted it. The sort of manifestation of your will or your intention. This is called in Scientology a postulate. And the more auditing you get, the more powerful your postulates are supposed to be. So, theoretically, you could postulate, I'll win the lottery, and boom, you win the lottery. I never saw a Scientologist do that, but theoretically, this is the carrot that they're chasing, and they're paying all this money for. Because remember, all of this auditing is paid for. You have to give them money to get this stuff, that none of this is free. So the ladder gets you up to a place called the state of clear, which goes back to the Dianetics promises. But then it goes further, and there are confidential levels above the state of clear, which are called the OT levels, or the operating Thetan levels, where you start really operating as a Thetan, as a spiritual entity. And these are confidential because Hubbard says that they are dangerous to the uninitiated, and that they are not ready for them. You could actually be hurt, spiritually traumatized, or even die if you are exposed to this information, or try to do the processes of these levels without having done the lower levels first.
Let me just say, it's so incredibly convenient that the only way you could even come close to handling this stuff is if you've already given away all of your free will. and
basically, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, because the church is the gatekeeper. They're the ones whose hoops you have to jump through to get to these levels. There's no other way to do it. And so Scientologists have a lot of loyalty tests and a lot of, hoops they have to jump through and a lot of money they have to pay. It costs upwards of $1 million to get to the top of this, this ladder, this bridge. So there are 8 OT levels that have been released. And the one that's talked about on South Park, the whole Xenu thing, is all the introduction material to OT level 3. So you do OT1, you do OT2, and then you get to 3, and that's when you find out about the Xenu stuff. But the Xenu stuff in South Park is only half the story. The other half of the story that South Park didn't get into is the fact that because of this great catastrophe that happened 76 million years ago here on Earth, when they blew up the volcanoes with the atomic weapons, and we were all part of it because we were all here, is that a whole bunch of the billions and billions of the Thetans who were sort of disembodied altogether at once in this great catastrophe, a lot of them fell into a kind of semi-conscious comatose state where they could no longer operate to even have a body. And so they became what Hubbard calls body Thetans, and they glom on to you. And you're sort of possessed by thousands of other Thetans who are glommed onto you. And the process, and that's the big reveal of OT3 as far as Scientologists are concerned. Xenu's just a story as to how it happened. They don't care about that. They care about, now I have to use this e-meter and go into auditing, and I have to sort of do an exorcism or a kind of contact these body Thetans one by one telepathically and wake them up and rehabilitate them with certain Scientology processes and release them from me and get them off of me.
And that could be, I'd have to imagine, a lifelong pursuit if you are globbed onto by thousands at a time.
Well, it's years. It's years, because this is the theme of OT 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So all of those OT levels are involved with getting rid of body Thetans. And that's all you're doing for years and years. And it's done with an auditor, or there's a special form of this auditing at that level called solo auditing, where you're literally in a room with an e-meter by yourself, silently giving yourself commands and watching the needle on the dial and doing the Scientology process to release the Thetans, right? The body Thetans. And this is ultra confidential stuff in Scientology. None of this stuff is revealed to lower level people. The 27 years I was in Scientology, I never knew about the body Thetans. I never got to those OT levels. I got to the state of clear. So I learned about this stuff outside of Scientology. But my mother, my father, they both did these levels. They verified all of this is true to me. They've since left Scientology. They actually got out before I did. There's a happy ending there.
Oh, okay.
So my mom was a real support system for me when I got out. And she verified all of this stuff. She's like, yep, it's all true. All of that stuff. That's what we were told, and that's what we did. And that's how that works. And so that's how the Xenu story sort of plugs in there. But I got to tell you, there are even wilder science fiction stories all throughout Scientology's materials that I mean, Xenu is a pretty wild story, but there are even wilder ones.
Well, thankfully, I can already see our discussions being part of at least a trilogy. Because as I said when I was introducing you, your story in this context is something I've been waiting to hear firsthand for a long time. But everything you're talking about is just so general in its application to the traps and the pitfalls we see people finding themselves, entangled all over the place. It doesn't matter what the organization is, what's happening. It could be completely atheistic and very secular, but it's still mind control. I mean, this can be applied in so many ways. So I'm glad we're doing this, and I want to hear those crazy stories. But let me ask you one other question about your particular involvement, because I read here, what is Sea Org?
Okay, yeah. All right. So now
it says it's an elite group.
It is. Yeah, it's an elite group of fanatics. So Scientology has three basic, aside from the whole indoctrination thing and the sort of carrot that everybody is chasing in Scientology. Structurally speaking, Scientology is divided up or organized into three kind of classes of involvement. There's your lowest level, your public level Scientologists, and that would be, your regular paying parishioners, the people who have jobs, have a life, have kids, go to work. That Scientology is part of their life, and they pay for the classwork and they pay to get the auditing and move on up that bridge. And that's called the public Scientologists. Then you have the second tier, which is your staff members. And this is how I started going from public to staff. I was recruited at 17 years old, right out of high school, to work at the Church of Scientology in Santa Barbara. And so your city level churches, Santa Barbara, Denver, New York, Twin Cities, Rome, these city level operations have staff members. That's the term they use. And you sign a religious volunteer contract, which commits you to 2.5 or 5 years of service to the church. And you get no money really. I mean, it's about $30 a week in pay. Most people have to have another job in order to support themselves or a spouse or something. And that's your staff level of commitment. And there have been people who finish a contract, sign another one. There have been people who've been on staff for decades. I was on staff for 8 years before I joined the Sea organization. And that's SEA as in the ocean, as in seas. Hubbard was in the Navy, and in 1967, he created his own Navy, and he called it the Sea organization. And he went off on a boat. He bought a couple boats, and this was over in the UK and off the coast of England. And he bought these boats, and his most loyal followers went with him and started this. It was called the Sea Project at first, and then it became the Sea Organization, a formal organization, but not incorporated. There's no Sea Organization as a legal entity. Every Church of Scientology is its own incorporated entity, but the Sea Org is they call it a fraternal brotherhood.
Oh,
because it has no legal existence. But the Sea Org is what runs Scientology the same way. The best kind of comparison I've found so far is to compare it to how the Vatican runs the Catholic Church. Like the core of Catholicism is the Vatican. That's where all the policies issued, the edicts come from, the rules, the enforcement, the highest levels of it. That's the Vatican. And so with Scientology, that's the Sea Org. All the centralized activities, the dissemination, the promotional materials, the videos, the book producing, all that stuff is done by the Sea Org. And also all of the management of the churches is done by the Sea Org. So when I joined the Sea Org in 1995, I moved down to Los Angeles and I worked at those big blue buildings that you see. That's what's called a Sea Org base. And they use naval terminology. It's a sort of paramilitary outfit. We had ranks and ratings and yes sir, no sir, how high sir, and we took ourselves very seriously.
That's a very serious LARP right here. This is the role. It's like I don't know. I guess fake it till you make it. But again, it makes total sense that this was all born from the mind of a Pulp Fiction writer. And it just got to transfer all of this pageantry off of the pages of a book into, I mean, this is incredible that you guys actually had the hierarchy, the rankings, that's insane.
It's full on. And Hubbard was the Commodore, and that was his rank, and he was at the top, and his word is law in Scientology. In fact, he named himself or called himself Source with a capital S. He is source, right? All things emanate from him. And so this is the attitude in Scientology, is that L. Ron Hubbard is he's not a god. He is L. Ron Hubbard. And so, from him come all good things, and all the writings and the books and the lectures and everything. And there's a tremendous, it's hard for people to, for me to easily get across to people. There are thousands and thousands of pages of writings, and there are something on the order of like 4 or 5 thousand recorded lectures. L. Ron Hubbard was prolific. I mean, he's a world record holder for, most writings, most translated author. The man just wrote and wrote and wrote and talked and talked and talked. And that's the body of Scientology. It's a tremendous amount of material. And the Sea Org are the custodians of this. They are the ones who are entrusted with delivering those OT levels. You can't go to Denver or Santa Barbara and learn about Xenu. They're not authorized to deliver that material. You have to go to a Sea Org base to have a Sea Org member who's reached that level and is specially trained to run the classrooms or do the auditing so that you can have those secrets revealed to you.
And that was you.
And the Sea Org is what holds, they're the gatekeepers for all of this.
And that was you. Yeah,
that was me.
You would go on those missions around the country. You would make appearances. You would educate as well.
That's right. I did a lot of different work in the Sea Org. I managed Scientology churches. I managed the delivery of all of Scientology across the West U.S. I was in charge of that. So all the people going to classes, all the people getting auditing, I was keeping track of all of that stuff across all of the Western United States. Scientology divides the world into various continental areas for management purposes, right? So West U.S. is the big place. And then I made books. They have their own in-house printing facility. I worked there. And I went around to various churches on special projects. They call them missions. I would be sent out on missions. I was a missionaire, and I would be given special projects to go do. And the idea is you would go with another Sea Org member and have a set of project orders that you're supposed to get done, and you go do them, and then you go back home. And I did a lot of those missions. So
now that you are at essentially management level, you are at the priest class level, essentially.
Yes, that's
so,
right.
I have to imagine that when you started questioning what you were a part of, it would have been over the course of doing work with Sea Org.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the most shocking thing you witnessed in the Sea Org that made you question the true intentions of the organization?
Oh, there were a number of things. The first thing that sort of got me wondering, and it was a process to undo this. I mean, remember, I was raised with this. When you're a second generation cult member, it is, I believe, my opinion is that it is a more difficult process to unwind from it or escape from it, because you literally have never had any other normal than that belief system. You weren't converted as an adult. So it was a 10-year process for me to sort of let go and unwind and realize what I finally realized, which is that I was surrounded by lies and I was lying all the time, and I needed to stop doing that. That was the final thing. But the thing that got me started was realizing through a series of actions I did that the management of the church was more interested in busy work and emergencies and keeping things at this like incredible hellish pace all the time, rather than actually be effective at getting the job done of expanding Scientology. We were there, I thought, to expand Scientology. But what I found was I kept running into situations, and there was one in particular, which is kind of a long story, where I just hit a brick wall, and I realized that it was all about, sort of the saying we were expanding Scientology more so than actually doing that. And I was punished, you could say, for doing a good job, for going out and went down to San Diego and did a project and was very successful at it. But then I went home and kind of, got bitch slapped for it. So that was my first inkling. Wait a minute. I thought I just did great and I'm being punished. And that was weird. That was like a what? And so, but you're able to kind of compartmentalize it and go, okay, well, the mission and here's what we're doing, and okay, got to keep going. And so I kept going and I kept going. And there was a point where there was a sort of internal being a cult and being as cloistered and bubble world as it is, they have their own justice system.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole series of rewards and punishments. Hubbard wrote an issue called Rewards and Penalties. and so, and there's very few rewards and an awful lot of penalties. And there was a 3-year period of time where I was basically put into what anybody would judge as a prison system. There was an internalized system where I was sequestered off with a group of people who were being similarly punished for 3 straight years. And I couldn't see my wife. I could no holidays. Every day was the same day. It was, it was kind of Groundhog Day for 3 years. No holidays, no time off. There's none of that. And 20 minutes for lunch, 20 minutes for dinner, run everywhere you're going, hard physical labor for about 12 to 14 hours a day. It was rough. It was the single hardest thing I've ever done in my life, was getting through that prison program. It was called the Rehabilitation Project Force, or RPF. They've claimed that they've canceled this program now, but they could bring it back tomorrow. I mean, all the things they do in this program, they still do to people. So it was just sort of concentrated punishment. And the idea was to get your head straight and get you back on the program and get you back to being a good yes or no, sir, Sea Org member. So in doing that program, I was physically abused. I was beat up on. I broke my finger and was denied medical care for 24 hours. It was a very, very harsh situation. There was, to say there was a lot of yelling and screaming is sort of a given. It was a very traumatizing and very rough experience. The fact that I finished the program, is sort of a point of if I say, I hope this doesn't come across badly, but 75% of the people who went there left.
I was going to say,
I'm done, right? And I made it through.
I know. It's not that, maybe to your toughness when you thought that, hey, well, because at that point, because obviously there's definitely got to be a bridge between, damn, I'm really being mistreated. But your faith in whatever it was is still intact. There's a difference between saying, wow, I'm really mistreated, but your faith is intact, to finally, and that's where I would like to know about right now, is when did you look yourself in the mirror and said, Lord Xenu, Thetans, what the hell am I, when did it was that the whole set on the stage fell down? It wasn't just that, oh man, my peers are really tyrannical and this is getting abusive, but I know it's for a good cause. When did the entire set come crashing down?
Awesome. Yeah, that was in 2013. And what happened was in 2012, I had my moment of, okay, I got to leave the Sea Org. I got to stop working for the church. This is just not working out for me. I'm lying to people to convince them to do Scientology. It's not good. But I could still believe that L. Ron Hubbard knew what he was talking about, and that the books and the lectures and the writings were revealed truth, even if the organization was completely off the rails. And a lot of Scientologists leave this way. They realize that there's something wrong with management and with the church, but they still think the subject is good, and they kind of separate these two things. And that was what I was doing in 2012. So it took me about 9 months to get myself extricated from the Sea Org and get out of there. I didn't just leave one night because I wanted to, as a true believer, I wanted to still go up that bridge. I wanted to find out what those, confidential levels were about, and then achieve spiritual freedom. And I thought Scientology could give it to me. So I left the Sea Org, and needless to say, it's an easy assumption, but let's say it out loud. I didn't have internet access when I was in the Sea Org. It's a very controlled operation, and the thought control that there are layer upon layer upon layer of thought policing and information control and behavior control in that group. So once I got out of that group, I had a bit more freedom, and I was already questioning the organization, questioning the leadership. I had some questions about L. Ron Hubbard and his life story as presented to us in the church. So I got on the internet, and about 4 months down the rabbit hole, and I was down it every night. I mean, I was reading ex-members' testimonials. I was reading files from the FBI about L. Ron Hubbard. I was reading his war record. I was reading his F's and D's that he got in university grades. He was failing out of classes. We got a whole different version of his life story in Scientology. We didn't hear any of that. I found out about the fact that he was married to two women at the same time for a year, and neither wife knew about the other one. I mean, it was like, what? Who is this guy? My whole world rocked in 4 months. It was like, to say I was upset would be, an understatement. And that's what broke all of it. Was seeing L. Ron Hubbard's name on directives and issues and policies that called for stalking and harassment and legal action against critics that was absolutely illegal behavior. And there's L. Ron Hubbard telling people to do it. It was undeniable. And once I saw all of that, it all fell apart. And that's when I watched South Park. And I let myself watch South Park, and I let myself open up the confidential information that's all over the internet. But in the world of Scientology, that stuff is locked down. I never heard the word Xenu in all those years I was in Scientology. So, finding out about that and seeing that the secrets of the universe that I thought I was chasing my whole life were just a bunch of illogical science fiction nonsense. I mean, again, I was furious, very, very upset. And that's what caused me to start speaking out. And in speaking out, that's when the church caught me speaking out and said, okay, you're a bad boy, and we're labeling you a suppressive person, and you can no longer have contact with Scientologists.
Well,
and that's when I lost all those friends, all those relationships, everything, just overnight gone. And that all happened in 2013.
Yeah, well, I know about fair game policy.
Yeah.
I've read about that, and I wrote down myself a note over here. It's essentially permission for members of the church to silence dissent by any means necessary. It's actually the basis for a lot of the theories of some very popular disappearances, and other things that are going on. But and also just for my due diligence. The things that have been published about you, I don't know where they come from, but the Church of Scientology has published some pretty bad things. What they say, they accuse you of doing, from personal extramarital affairs and whatever. I mean, it's all out on the internet. I had just want to see what's going on. There's a lot out there. So I look at this and I say, well, it's this would fall within fair game, but I figure I bring it up with you to see how you respond to all of it, because they go in and they make, I don't know, they everything from defamatory to extramarital affairs and all types of addictions and obsessions and stuff like that. So
that's right. Yeah, they say a lot of stuff. And what they do is they take a kernel of truth and then they blow it up to the worst possible interpretation. And so I'm accused, for example, I'll just give you one thing, is I'm accused of being a deadbeat dad. Well, my son was born while I was a staff member in Santa Barbara, and no one, I repeat, no one was okay with me going off and taking care of him. He was born in Australia. His mother was Australian, and we had a brief relationship. She went back to Australia, and, I ended up having a son. And this is back in 1991. And I'm a staff member in Santa Barbara. I'm like, oh, I should go to Australia and be a father and, be responsible. And everyone, all the Scientology staff around me were like, nope. That's not what you're doing. You're staying here. You're honoring your commitment to us. You're a Scientologist first. This is what you're doing. And of course, they're paying me $25 a week at most. So then the church gets to accuse me years later of being a deadbeat dad. Well, my entire life was involved with and revolved around Scientology. So yes, I did not go to Australia. It was impossible for me to do so.
Mhm.
And Scientology not only didn't help, they put every roadblock they could in the way of me doing that. So it's a bit, well, to be blunt, I don't know, can I swear?
Yeah.
It's pretty messed up that they would then put all that on me. Well, he's the deadbeat dad. Now, also part of the story, and really the good part of the story, is that after I left Scientology and put it all behind me and was declared, I got the money together and I went to Australia and I met my son for the first time and we spent a week together and it was brilliant. It was wonderful. It was one of the best times of my life to meet him. And he, of course, is now an adult. And we restored a relationship and communication, and it was great.
Well, I can't
I
imagine.
wasn't there for him growing up. That's true. I was a Scientologist first. And so the church won't tell you any of that or their culpability in it. They just throw a label on me because it sounds like that makes me out to be the ultimate bad guy.
Yeah. Well,
and that's an example of how fair game is actually carried out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to imagine that defection like this was going to be difficult one way or another. You said that your parents gave you some kind of support in that respect too, but especially since part of your defection was embracing a public persona that is in direct contradiction of not only that organization but other organizations like it. So it's just something I had to ask you about, because people who look into you are going to see it, and it's going to be part of the story one way or another.
Absolutely. I'm an open book. I have been doing this for 12 years now that I've been out of Scientology. I've been speaking out almost from the get-go. 2014 is when I started my YouTube channel and came out as myself. At first, I was speaking out anonymously, and then once I was declared, there was no reason to stay anonymous. And so I just put myself out there. And I have been fighting against not only Scientology, but all these cultic groups, and even went and got educated in coercive control at a master's level so that I would really, truly get my wits around what this is all about and how these things like mind control, which is this, very ominous and often misunderstood phrase. But, if you can lie to people, you can control them. And Hubbard knew that. He talked about it. And that's what Scientologists, that's what cults are about, is about deceiving and lying to people. And under those false pretenses, extracting money and influence and power and sex from them. And that's Scientology's one of the worst in the ex-cult space amongst the professionals in this space. It is acknowledged that Scientology has more methods of thought reform or mind control, if you will, than almost any other group out there. They're layer after layer after layer of it. So at this point, it's with some degree of pride that I get to look back and go, yeah, I got myself out of that. I didn't have to have an intervention or something. But it's rough. It is not an easy go to escape a cult or recover from it. Getting out is just step one. There's a whole path of healing and recovery from this that often takes years for people.
Yeah. Well, I have one or two questions about that, and then I'd love to blast through a few other ones that came in from the audience that I think are really interesting. Number one is, how do you approach a person? I guess we can start off with something simple, like how many people have you saved from Scientology in particular? So keep that in mind, but also, how do you approach a person? I have to imagine that it's them that wants the support, or do you how do you even try to crack the door open to introduce a seed of doubt to save them from some kind of situation where, as you say, it's coercive control has been affected on them so completely? How do you even start that red pilling?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And there's a number of ways to approach it. It's very, very individual for each person you're going to speak with, and going to depend an awful lot on the group, their experience with it, and how extreme their belief is in it, because it's a spectrum sort of thing. You can be more or less committed to a group. And, if you're dealing with somebody who's sitting on a fence about it and wondering, whether they should or shouldn't, you can maybe say or get away with saying certain things that you would never say to somebody who's, fully in and committed and will just as soon disconnect from you or shun you as hear anything negative about their group. So it depends on who you're talking to. But the idea with seed planting is that you have to talk to the person where they're at. You cannot argue or outwit a cult member. Their entire thought process is a circular logic where at the center of it is a pillar of belief in the divinity or power or authority of the cult leader and the cult beliefs. So the only way you're going to penetrate is I make an analogy of a thought fortress, and there are no walls that man can build that are stronger than the ones we build in our mind, right? And they are in a prison of belief or a thought fortress. And so you can batter at those walls with facts and reason and logic and evidence. Doesn't matter. They're not listening. You have to be invited in. And that means they got to open the door. And the only way to do that is if they have some degree of trust in you, if they feel safe to do so. You're not going to attack them. You're not going to make them wrong or tell them what stupid idiots they are. And this is very counterintuitive for people. A lot of people really blow it because they think they're going to argue this person out of it. It tends to be a longer term kind of a thing where you're sort of planting seeds of doubt, maybe addressing concerns they have with the group, not that you have with the group. The group's screwed, but what do they think is bad about the group? What do they have a bad experience with? What are their views about, is the leader perfect, or is there something about the leader maybe that isn't so perfect, and elicit that from them, again, in a safe space where you're not judging them, you're not arguing with them. Questioning them is far more effective and far more thought-provoking than trying to give them facts. Right. They're not interested in your facts.
Yeah, that happens. I think that is where anybody that goes like man on the street style, whether it's about a political issue or a cultural issue or whatever the hell it is, they if anybody's going to ever make progress with somebody who's entrenched in a position, it's usually through that sort of dialectic, that kind of that Socratic method kind of a thing there, especially when you have somebody that is in a situation like a cult. They have been without independent thought for so long that you're almost inviting them to just restart the critical thinking faculties of their brain again, not necessarily introducing new programming, but maybe just the introduction and the encouragement in that respect is enough to start causing a little bit of cognitive dissonance there. And it's
You're saying all the right words. That's exactly right. Because that's exactly what you're trying to do. You can have a very, very brilliant person, a doctor, a lawyer, very, very intelligent people get wrapped up in cults all the time. It has nothing to do with how smart somebody is. And arguably, the smarter they are, the easier they fall for cults, because the more sure they are that they would never, ever be deceived by something. So the critical thinking shuts down on the subject of the cult, not across their entire life. They can still think critically as a doctor, but not when it comes to Scientology, let's say. So you can't, again, that's why you can't argue or reason with them. You're trying to engage their critical thinking. And one great way of doing that, one way of seed planting and sort of introducing things that they'll get them thinking, is to talk to them or show them material about other cults, not theirs. You're dealing with Scientologists, show them Happy Shiny People on Netflix. Show them, Wild Wild West. Show them, talk to them about Nexium. And not with an eye of, and it's just like Scientology. You don't talk about Scientology at all. You go, this Keith Raniere guy was off the goddamn rails. He was branding women. Look at this guy. And they go watch The Vow, and they start connecting the dots themselves to their Scientology experiences and the controls that are being put on them in Scientology. Because a lot of Scientology controls are not subtle, and people chafe against them. They don't like being controlled, and yet they'll stay in because they're chasing the carrot of personal immortality, and that's a powerful carrot to be chasing.
Well,
you know?
yeah, I know, absolutely. Well, especially when you're talking about godlike immortality.
Oh yeah,
you know, there's many of us out here, and myself included, in the audience, who is always keeping the next life in mind, and wanting to leaving the world in a better place, and hedging our bets and keeping our faith close to us. But it's not to this level, and definitely not in a state of constant exorcism, though sometimes I believe I need one. And it's crazy. Now, I have a couple of things I just want to throw at you. First of all, talking about notable disappearances, and you brought up the current leader of the church right now, the wife of the current leader, Shelly Miscavige. Miscavige.
Yep.
She in particular is a Sea Org member, or at least was. We don't know. I mean, everyone has a different theory that she wasn't seen since 2007. Police say they have made contact, but no one gave no proof. What do you think is going on here? That's a hell of a long time to be cloistered and have no real proof of life.
Well, Sea Org members are not public figures. And so, the 17 years that I was in the Sea Org, I didn't have a public life either. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to find proof of life of me. Shelly Miscavige, of course, is a special case because she's married to the leader of Scientology. And yes, she has not been seen publicly since 2007, except for Tony Ortega's reporting indicates one or two public sightings up near Twin Peaks, up in the mountains of I think it's San Bernardino, sort of north of Hemet and San Jacinto. They up by Lake Tahoe and Big Bear. They have, or sorry, not Tahoe, but Big Bear. They have a Scientology Sea Org base up there. It's a secret one, and secret to Scientologists. We know where they are, and this is where some of the most confidential materials of Hubbard are kept. And she apparently was relegated there, and this is your assignment, and you're going to work here now. And she knew she had screwed up because Miscavige sort of relegated her there. And she's not the only person who's been relegated to some, distant place because they screwed up and pissed off David Miscavige. He is the dictator of Scientology now. His word is law. So that's basically what happened to her. She was good friends with Leah Remini. And when Leah Remini came out as a celebrity, she raised the question, hey, where the hell is Shelly? Because Shelly wasn't at Tom Cruise's wedding, to Katie Holmes. I think that was 2008 or whatever. And Leah had the balls to ask, where's Shelly? And that's what got Leah in trouble that ended up getting her out of Scientology. So David Miscavige does what he wants when it comes to Sea Org members. And that's his, Shelly and that's his wife. She was raised in Scientology also. And so she's fully committed and as a full believer in the mission. And so she's, it's my best conjecture, and I know it's not necessarily popular public opinion, but I understand what it is to be in a Scientology cult mindset, and the dedication and belief of that is complete. It's intense. It is hard to describe to somebody who hasn't experienced it, but you're all in for your entire life. And the Sea Org, we didn't mention this, but that's the billion-year contract people. Those are the guys who sign on for this life and next and next and next. So they're as all in as you could possibly be. And so her relationship with David Miscavige, believe it or not, to her is secondary to her commitment to Scientology. And so if David doesn't want her around, okay, she's not around. Quite honestly, the only reason they're probably still married is because you can't compel a wife to testify against a husband in court. And David Miscavige is well aware of that fact. And that's probably why she's still married to him. But we've had indications that he's been playing around since then with other people. So,
Jeez, I mean, there's just so much. Everything that you are describing here is just time lost. I think about being a person who is, as I said, I use the word cloistered since 2007. I at that point, I almost hope she never has a red pill moment, because the devastation of realizing decades are gone, and now you're just an old woman is that must be just awful. And
I can speak from firsthand experience. It's beyond words.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing there too is today, for example, is the at 6:00 was the trade deadline for Major League Baseball. So I was watching everybody wheeling and dealing, relief pitchers, this and that, the years on this one's contract. You're going to get this one over here. You have 3 years left on his contract, couple $1 million. This one was, and then when you mention that Sea Org members are signing contracts that extend into different lifetimes,
it's a cult, man.
Wow.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we have to say. I mean, and I've been in the headspace, it's the same level of headspace. Dare I make this comparison, but I will. It's the same level of headspace that you get radicalized terrorism in, that you get human trafficking in, that domestic violence happens in. It's coercive control is a human problem, and it exists across a number of spheres of activity of our lives. And people can get very, very serious about their beliefs and go all in to a degree that is dangerous to others. And there is no question that is what Scientology is.
Well, is there ever a level that you can achieve that exempts you from all of the auditing and the discipline? Like you talked, obviously Leah Remini's, her journey has been very well documented. It's been, she's done a number of emotional interviews and exposés when she first came out about it. But then there are the Tom Cruises, who are essentially at the top of Mount Olympus. It seems that people know Tom Cruise more than they know this Miscavige guy. But is Tom Cruise beyond getting audited?
No, Tom Cruise is at the top of the bridge, so there isn't a whole lot more auditing for him to do. He's OT level 8, which is the highest level you can go. There's never any end to the things they can do for you or to you in Scientology as far as their services go. It's a hamster wheel. So even when you get to the top, they have sent people back down to the bottom and had them do it all over again. I mean, it really is a money-making scam at the end of the day. That really, really takes advantage of an awful lot of well-intentioned people. I mean, you got to know that most of the people in Scientology are sincere, good, moral people who have just bought into a belief set that is absolutely, whack, and given an awful lot of money. And the money they give also is part of their commitment to stay in. I mean, look, I spent all this money. It's called sunk cost fallacy. You once you're in for a penny, in for a pound. So there's a lot of social and financial reasons that people will stick with it. And since you bring up Tom Cruise, I'll just say, a lot of people, way too many people, have a hard time believing that he's a true believer. But he is. He is. He really believes in all of it. And he believes that he has risen to his position. And it is an amazing position he's in. And he totally believes that Scientology is a big part of the reason that he got to where he is. And he credits it with that. And that's why he shows up to their events and is literally best friends with David Miscavige, the leader. They really are best buds. They really do hang out together. And Tom Cruise wants Scientology to succeed, and he wants the whole world to become Scientologists. But he learned the hard way in the 2000s that he's not the poster child, that's not the way to success for him. So he had to tone that down. The whole jumping on Oprah's couch and all that nonsense, arguing with Matt Lauer, getting into it with Brooke Shields over psych drugs was not a winning move for him. But that was the closest he ever came to showing who he really is to the world at large. He is not what you would consider a good person, because Scientology's made him a the worst version of himself in his private life.
Yeah, since we've already referenced the South Park a couple of times tonight, I believe it was the Scientology episode that caused Isaac Hayes to say, "I'm no longer voicing the character of Chef." And
That's right.
and then shortly after the Scientology episode, they killed off Chef, and they used some. Yeah, I know, and it's just, but Isaac Hayes, he made his statements about how everybody's beliefs should be respected, even though the show has a history of just shitting on everybody. So I don't understand
Exactly.
that. The celebrity attraction from the whole thing just really doesn't make any sense. But I guess when you talk about being able to buy status, but almost like a country club kind of a thing, but a spiritual country club, I don't get it. You have to be a true believer to give that much money and that much of yourself and your time. So I don't see how it could just ever be, well, Scientology is a great club to be a part of because the amenities are awesome. Freemasonry gives you more back than what I'm hearing about right now. But one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know I opened up and asking you about L. Ron Hubbard and whether or not he was in any way, shape, or form, had one foot into the intelligence world or anything like that, only because of the psychological hook aspect. I mean, there is great psychological data value to what he created, as far as getting into stimulus response for people and how far in the weeds they can go, especially in extracting money and making them convert, making them do things, the disassociation of being able to isolate yourself, to be so in a thing that you find it doable and necessary to isolate yourself from your family, when the most precious thing you can do in your life, the short time we have here, is be with your family. But I have a few friends of the show who all said the same thing, came from different angles. They said, Frank, you got to ask this guy if you knew anything on the inside. I know you said that people on higher level, you never even hear the word Xenu being mentioned, but as far as internal dialogue and legend building, there's a lot out there about L. Ron Hubbard's time in the desert with Jack Parsons, who, of course, was a very occult-driven rocket engineer who was there for the founding of NASA, and they were doing a lot of occult rituals out in that desert. There was spiritual incarnation efforts, a lot of different sex magic, all that stuff.
Yep, all true.
L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons,
all true.
What can you expand on it at all?
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Yeah,
Please.
I actually just recently, within the last month, I did a 4-part series all about Hubbard's occult beliefs, and sort of dive deep on what did L. Ron Hubbard really believe. And L. Ron Hubbard was a follower of Aleister Crowley, Thelema, the Ordo Template Orientis, the Eastern Order of the Knights Templar. That was Aleister Crowley's deal. And L. Ron Hubbard learned about that when he was a teenager, 16 years old. He was reading Aleister Crowley. And Hubbard had, some visions and hallucinations and ideas about the world. And Crowley's ideas kind of connected with him. And so occult practices and occult beliefs and the idea of magic, meaning a system of processes or spells or rituals which would allow you to manifest your intention. That's what Thelema is all about. That's what Scientology is really all about. I mentioned postulates earlier. That's magic. That's the tradition of magic going all the way back centuries. So Hubbard had beliefs in those things. And when he found Jack Parsons, they solidified into actual rituals and blood sex magic of the kind that Aleister Crowley was putting forward. Crowley was still alive at that time. And Hubbard never met Crowley. They never had any kind of relationship, but Hubbard had a relationship for a few months with Jack Parsons. And this was in Pasadena, California, where I grew up. My paper route went right by Jack Parsons' place. I had no idea. So Hubbard did these rituals and was part of all of this. And his personal writings from that time period tell us exactly who and what L. Ron Hubbard was and how he thought about things. We have pages and pages and pages of writings from Hubbard from that time that he never, ever expected that would be made public. And I went through all of them in these videos. And so we went line by line through this. And one of the key lines amongst many, there's misogyny and ableism and a host of narcissistic behaviors in these writings. But one of the key points of them is that Hubbard said and believed that all men will be my slaves. And that's what he had going on underneath the Scientology belief set, is this occult belief set. And he was hiding it all in plain sight. The symbols of Scientology, the cross, the Dianetics triangle, all these key symbols of Scientology are actually occult symbols with occult magical significance. And this is really hard for people coming out of Scientology to get their head around, because none of it is obvious or apparent in the Scientology writings. Hubbard was hiding it the whole time. But his creation of Dianetics and Scientology was, in a way, you could analogize it to a magical working, a spell, if you will. And not just a single little, cast a spell. Like I said, there are layers and layers and layers of mind control techniques and operations being done to Scientologists as part of doing this bridge, this ladder of indoctrination. They are taught things, they are told things, they believe things as true that Hubbard wanted them to accept and believe so that they would be his slaves. He was all about that. That was his game within a game, you could say. And he told somebody in 1969 in an off-the-record candid moment, I like reeling in the clever ones, the smart ones, right? Like, it was a game for him. He enjoyed it. So it wasn't just a money-making operation for him. He had a whole other thing going on. Of course, the other thing about Hubbard is through the 60s and into the 70s, he started buying into his own bullshit and kind of started going mad. And by the 1980s, he was gone. And we have testimonials and stories from people who were around him that tell us what his state of mind was, and it was horrible. Well, he was not a good person. He just wasn't.
As Christopher Lee once said, when asked about whether or not he had a big occult library, that was a big rumor about Christopher Lee, and he definitively said no, and I warn you all to stay away from it, because it is enough to you lose your mind and your soul. And what Jack Parsons is, very for a long time trying to incarnate the Moonchild out there, and
that's right.
In 1947 or something like that.
Yep, that's right.
1946. That's all a whole part of it. And I'll tell you something else. Sir. When we open up the show and you say, well, no, he's not working with, the FBI or the CIA, whatever. This is a bona fide link to at least the shadow government. This is a bona fide, Jack Parsons is a bona fide conduit into that world, at least the government behind the civilian government that we all believe is America. That is, I'm just saying.
Dots can be connected. I have taken exception to many conspiracy theories over the years because they connect dots that don't connect, but I understand why people would think that way. I really do. It's not my place to sit here and tell people what to think about their conspiracies. The thing about conspiracies is there's a sort of a circular logic and self-proving sort of thing to them. So I tread lightly around this stuff. I know what I know for sure, and I base my opinions and my statements here today on those things that I can actually fall back on. I can show you Hubbard's writings. I can show you the relationship that, between him and Parsons, and the fact that they engaged in these rituals it's all laid out in Jack Parsons' personal diaries. It's Hubbard's writings confirm it. It's easily proven. There's no dot connecting I have to do to prove that those are real things. The hidden symbolism of the Scientology symbols is so obvious when you analyze Hubbard's language and his actual beliefs. It's not a fairy tale, right? When it comes to the FBI, CIA stuff, my question here's one I'll throw out for you just as one debunk point on that, which is L. Ron Hubbard went into hiding on the ocean and started the Sea Org in 1967 as a direct result of the United States government investigating him and the church for what's called inurement, where he was personally profiting from his role as the head of Scientology. That's a no-no for church leaders of nonprofit churches. And the tax exemption was taken away from Scientology, and it was revoked. And there was no more tax exemption, no more religious exemption for Scientology. That stayed that way all the way until 1993 when David Miscavige got it back. So if Hubbard was working for the government in the 70s, wouldn't the most obvious thing he'd ask for back would be the tax exemption? But he didn't get it, and as a result of that, he stayed in hiding from the French government in the early 1970s, and the US government, and Interpol, and the UK government, all investigating him, all very well documented through that whole time period. So that's sort of one of my counters to that is, well, if he were working for those guys, that would absolutely be on the list of things he'd want, is give me my tax exemption back.
Yeah. Point taken.
So
point taken.
That's one thing I'll say.
Yeah. Point taken. And that kind of goes hand in hand with all of the Scientology, the establishment stories, that it was essentially established as a religion through lawfare, the government was bombarded with so many lawsuits or illegal inquiries or something like that. It was essentially just like arm twist and give it to them. So
very much so. The IRS was full on strong armed into giving them back their tax exemption. I don't have any question about that. Again, it's pretty documented when a group like Scientology, which their back was against a wall and it was live or die time. If they had to pay the tax bill they'd accumulated over those decades, it would have been the end of Scientology. So David Miscavige pulled out all the stops. And when you see what Scientology is capable of with the Operation Snow White, with what they did to Paulette Cooper in the 1970s, you know, the fair gaming you mentioned. I mean, they almost drove that woman to suicide. They engaged in the largest infiltration of the U.S. government that has ever been executed by a private entity. The Church of Scientology did that in the 1970s, and they were raided, and 11 people went to jail as a result of that, including Hubbard's wife, who had been part of ordering all of that. So that all actually happened, and as a result of that, you can see how ruthless they will be in pursuing their enemies. And the IRS became enemy number one for David Miscavige in the 1980s. And so all the lawsuits and following IRS officials around and strong-arming the commissioner of the IRS into a deal, that's a very Occam's razor simple explanation for how they got their tax exemption back. It all kind of makes sense. And all of that, by the way, despite the fact that the Supreme Court had ruled on things that it was IRS versus Hernandez, I think, where they never should have gotten their tax exemption back. You know, they never should have been able to do that, but they did, and the IRS capitulated, and they've had it ever since.
Well, I gotta say, Chris Shelton, this has been a great night, and there's so much that's on the books now. I can't wait to have you back at some point, because I want to learn.
Anytime.
I want all the crazy. I want to hear more of the crazy stuff.
Oh, there's so much more
for you. Maybe
we didn't even talk about heaven or implants or there is so much more.
Maybe what you can do is put together. Maybe the next show we do is a top 10 show, and we can talk about top 10 things that are crazier than Xenu, or something like that. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch.
Oh yeah, I got one book that I could pull all that from. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely be in touch about this, because I would love to bring you back for a little bit more of it, because this was an expansive night laying down groundwork. But I would love to bring you back for a shorter segment just to do a top 10 did you know crazy. That would be really exciting.
Awesome. No problem. Happy to.
So Chris, let everybody, I have your YouTube linked. I know that you do. Again, everybody, Chris does a lot more than just talking about his past within the organization of Scientology, which obviously he has a wide open book on. But his work expands beyond that into all modes of coercive control and cults, and allowing and helping people, giving people a nice safe passage out of those organizations, those dark places in life. So go and check him out. I have tagged his YouTube in the description of this episode on YouTube, and then everywhere else. If you just take that that I put in the description and go on YouTube and pop it in, you'll find that's all he had. You don't have an official website, right, Chris?
I do not.
Okay.
Let me say real fast, because it's pretty easy to remember. If you want to email me, my email address publicly is askchrisshelton@gmail.com.
Okay.
So you can always email me directly as well.
Chris, thank you so much for the time tonight. I really had a great time, and I know that the audience is going to love this one.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. There you go, everybody. Chris Shelton. Okay. Well, we're going to take a really quick break. We're going to come back, and I'm going to take your calls. I'm going to play something for you, too. I hope you enjoyed that. That's the most comprehensive we've gotten on that end. Let's
Alien assholes! In the words of my generation, up yours!
Anonymous versus Scientology. And let me show you, I just want to get right to the Linda McPherson part of it. This is a 20-minute video. It's I think you'd really enjoy it. You should go check it out. I put it into the Interesting Shite playlist on YouTube. So if you're on the YouTube already, you can check on my channel afterwards. All the public playlists, there's Interesting Shite. It should be the last one there. Anonymous versus Scientology. This is essentially how people on Anonymous got together to really start fighting Scientology through things like DDoS attacks, printer attacks. Like they would target and send faxes and all types of documents that were just pure black sheets, just black ink. They would do things to Scientology home offices that would get them their printers just to completely bleed ink by sending documents that were nothing but just pure black sheets of ink, which of course is the most evil thing you can do to anybody, is drain their printer cartridges. Evil. So you got to watch this on your own, but around the 6-minute mark, I gave myself the marker. That's the Linda McPherson. There's a couple of, like I said, disappearances and weird things about Scientology. Well, here's one instance of that.
Importantly, it drew attention to the Lisa McPherson case. Lisa McPherson was a longtime Scientology member who was very, very involved in the church. Over the years, she had invested thousands of dollars of her own money into the church's various programs. And in 1995, after being involved in a minor car accident, she was found walking naked in the streets. After she was found, she was brought to a nearby hospital to see a psychiatrist, and if you remember, Scientologists do not like psychiatry. So members of the Church of Scientology arrive at the hospital they brought her to, meet up with her, and she winds up checking herself out and leaving with them. She said she was going for religious care, and eventually this religious care with the church went south. And then rather than taking her to the closest hospital, they went much further to get to a hospital who had a Scientologist doctor on staff. When they got there, she was pronounced dead, and it had been found that she was starving, dehydrated, bruised, and bitten by cockroaches. And I'm not going to show the photos they took when they got her to the hospital, but suffice it to say that it's a far cry from the woman you see in these pictures. After this happened, the Church of Scientology was indicted on 2 felony charges, but those were eventually dropped. However, years later, Lisa McPherson's family filed a civil suit that they wound up settling out of court for undisclosed terms. And although the Lisa McPherson case was already very well known to a small group of anti-Scientologist activists, this was the first time it was ever getting this kind of mainstream exposure.
So, and then, of course, it goes into all of the Scientology protests that were organized at the time. This is the kind of history that you need to know, especially if you're about my age and younger. This is the history you need to know. These are the things that were going on that very few people that are a generation and certainly 2 generations older than me would have really been paying attention to. But this is an interesting one. Anonymous and 4chan. That's how they did this. You go check that out. But the doctors and the hospitals. That's some spooky shit, man. Car Guys New England says, interesting show tonight, Frank. Thank you so much, Car Guys. I appreciate it. And Jay Britt says, great interview. Frank, thank you. To my 2 super chatters out there. Let me go over to Rumble to see how everybody's doing. We've got one from Haywood, says there's 5 major religions in the U.S. with multiple variations. Let's see here. Of each, one by definition, they are all cults to other religions. If not, they would believe the same thing. Yes. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. When you talk about cults and religions, they really are interchangeable. You talk about if whether or not, of course, what sets them all apart. Are they life affirming? Do they have any basis of having real divine inspired works come bear fruit in the world? In this case, this is a business venture by a science fiction writer that is steeped in really like mind control and torture. So absolutely, it carries a negative connotation when you call something a cult. It is never responded to indifferently. It's always, but that's just it. That's the reputation of this particular topic tonight. So I get it. All right, let's see. Next one. Jay Semo says, wow, what a great guest and fascinating discussion. Thanks. Well, thank you, Jay Semo. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Over on pilled.net, group chat hug, one love, says Lynn. The Sentinel says, so if L. Ron Hubbard lost royalties for Dianetics in the 1950s, who made the money for the 1980s to 1990s ads on television? L. Ron Hubbard wrote Mission Earth Decology. The premise is the intel agency aliens control politicians with drugs from Earth. That's an interesting question about the royalties. In the series, the protagonist is an anti-hero alien intel agent tasked to manage the drug production, and his antagonist is an archetype hero who never falls into the villain's trap. Many taboo pornographic materials weaved into the stories. Well, that's Pulp Fiction for you. Godfather, for instance. The Sentinel also says, I really enjoyed Chris and his story. And then Zoso Dude says, holy smokes, Frankie, tonight's program was a grand slam. I was riveted by this guy. I loved it too. And tell me how awesome that now that we've gotten all the heavy lifting out of the way, how awesome is that top 10 follow-up going to be? And then also I'll make sure whenever he's on the schedule again, you guys can send in voicemails. I hope it's mostly voicemails and follow-up questions like Sentinel's right there about the royalties for book sales after Dianetics had become legally Scientology for one reason or another. Sentinel, please remember that question for whenever Chris is booked again. That would be great. What else do we have? Here, I got a couple other things. We'll go over a couple of minutes because, you know what, we got tomorrow off, and I have some fun things over here that shouldn't take too long. First one is a voicemail from Problematic Todd. I think this is about the New York shooting, it says.
Frank, this is Problematic Todd. I wanted to call with a thought about the shooting that occurred in New York today. You'll probably be talking about it on your show. This, to me, reeks of another psyop after psyop after psyop. We are to believe this guy just strolled across the pavement up to this building with a rifle in his hand into the Black Rock building, which is also the NFL offices. Two of the biggest corporations in the world. We're to believe they do not have world-class security. And this guy just strolls on up to the 33rd floor, number 33. It's almost always a calling card in these big stories, a wink and a nod to those in the club. 33, Freemasonry. It just reeks to me, Frank. And I believe it's all about the coming AI technocracy, ginning up more fear so that the people clamor for more security and surveillance and all the stuff that's coming. You may have talked a little bit about the Palantir stuff, and it's just we're swimming in a sea of it right now. That's my opinion. That's my take. I hope all is well, Frank. Talk to you soon.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. That's great. Well, I know that Blackstone and Black Rock are related. I think they have shared history. I think Black Rock was initially part of Blackstone. That's what I heard, but it doesn't matter. Black Rock, Blackstone, Black Cube, 33rd floor. Hey, I all the boxes started getting checked with me too, and I knew where all the threads were going to go. That's why the first person I got in touch with was Ryan Gable. I'm sure that Robert Phoenix probably had a good time with all of the synchronicity and all of the imagery that was elicited from that. So I get it. It's already like it might as well have been last month. But crazy. Yeah, I get you, Todd. I get you. You want to know okay, you want to talk about PSYOPs? Take a look at this. All right. We were talking the other night about Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle and her good genes. GENEJEAN genes. And what it all means. Is it really fascistic? Is it Nazi propaganda? Is it some sort of a dog whistle for Aryan genetics? Aryan. Well, here we are. I think this is yesterday. I made sure I said, is this new? What the hell happened? Dunkin' Donuts put out a something of their own. It's a new product. It's called Golden something, and it's taking a lot of heat right now. It's making a lot of people go, because it's so soon after the American Eagle one, and they've got this white boy talking about how he is the king of summer, and he mentions genetics right off the bat when it comes to his skin tone. Now, like, this is Dunkin' Donuts. I think it was our friend Adrian at Rise Attire who even commented on this publicly today or yesterday on Twitter, saying, hey, just remember, Dunkin' admitted in writing that they will not advertise on platforms like Rumble because they don't want to be associated with right-wing culture. And all of a sudden we get this, okay? Take a look at this. It looks like my pee after a brief vacation. I don't know what it is. When I go on vacation, I dehydrate immediately. I don't drink nearly as much as I do when I'm home. I can power a car, I can pee into a gas tank, and I can take us all the way home. That's how nuclear it is. Anyway, aside from that, I'm looking at this. We did Sydney Sweeney the other day, and now Dunkin' Donuts comes out with this. She's talking about her good genes while putting on blue jeans, and Dunkin' just happens to have this commercial locked and loaded, ready to go with a white boy summer, dressed in white, calling himself the king of summer, genetically gifted for his skin. And listen, I'm totally fine. As we were saying before, with a return to people, good-looking people who are hawking products again and getting away from the funhouse mirror models that you get from everywhere for the last 10, 15 years, where you just know exactly what they're doing. And but you know, I'm also completely behind mercilessly mocking and rejecting the several generations of white guilt programming. That definitely needs to go. No doubt about it. I'm fine with a recalibration of advertising and, of course, bucking the trends out there. But when it comes to, I don't know, man. When I saw this, I just couldn't help but think, are we getting played? Are we getting played? Both sides are getting played. You know, one side is getting radicalized. The other one is being gaslit. That's what's going on. One side is has been getting radicalized the last 15, especially since 2012, when they started with the Trayvon Martin stuff and Ferguson and Michael Black King or whatever the hell his name. What was his name? Michael somebody. I don't even remember anymore. There's so many layers of bullshit. And we go into these phases of radicalization while the other side is gaslit into a frenzy. There's only so long you can go without going crazy, that you see shit coming down, and then all of the authoritative sources in law enforcement and the news and everything else are saying it's not happening, even though they are reporting in front of burning buildings, or it's it's celebrating a segregation in one school over here or one community over here in Georgia, and then decrying white nationalism and racism and all that stuff, when anything that sniffs of the same happening elsewhere. I mean, that's the kind of double standards and the kind of gaslighting that makes people go crazy. And now all of a sudden, it's our turn to get our bellies scratched. You know, from the Dunkin' Donuts, from the American Eagles. I mean, there is a little element to that now. There is a little bit of an element to that now, where I saw this, I'm like, so if it was just Sydney Sweeney, I wouldn't. I want everybody to go back to, but the fact that we had two major advertising pushes that came out within like 72 hours of each other, and they're talking about genetics. And I'm just like, okay, well, who's the one writing the ads, and what's the real purpose here? Personally, I don't give a shit, but I just think about how other people perceive this stuff, because I don't care. I'm not going to be drinking that stuff. You can keep your Dunkin' Donuts golden shower, your golden shower drink. I don't care. I don't care one bit. Jeremy just says, Frank, what do you think about Joey Swole apologizing for his Hulk Hogan tribute? Oh, for those of you who don't know, Joey Swole is a fitness influencer, and he got really big for doing, not only fitness videos and encouragement to people going out there and getting big and all that stuff, but also coming to people's defense who were being doxxed in any way, shape, or form by people who take video cameras into gyms, and especially girls that go in there to film themselves doing squats, and they dox people who they think were looking at them, and they're just trying to get reactions so that they can feel like they're always being harassed and shit. Anyway, Joey Swole is in that kind of gym influencer alpha male category, and he put out an old video of him wearing a Hulk Hogan costume. And of course, everybody in his live streams, or a lot of people in his live streams, enough for him to notice, were really upset because, of course, Hulk Hogan said the N-word. And therefore, good. I'm happy he's dead. We need less of them in the world. So he was bombarded by those types, and he did the worst thing you can possibly do, and he issued an apology. So what's there to say? The mob still hates him, as they do for everybody that they gang up on like this. The mob hates them, and now a decent amount of his supporters have lost respect for him too. You don't negotiate with terrorists. You don't do that. People who celebrate Hulk Hogan's death because he was caught on tape saying the N word are usually verifiably the most racist people on the planet. By and large, racist. They're eugenicists. They're abortionists, rabid on all accounts, and yeah, violent by nature. So I understand where, the adrenaline can come from if you were to realize that you're subtly in the crosshairs of the most unreachable, unreasonable, wicked mob that this country can produce. A mob where, if not for double standards, they have no standards at all. But whatever. You can't do that. Hulk Hogan's a legend. No one leaves this world unblemished. And whatever. So I don't think Joey Swole is a bad person. I don't really follow him too much, but he's big enough where you've seen him around and you get what the content's about. But professionally, you can't be all pecs and biceps and no cojones. You have to have some. I know sometimes you can see a train wreck from a mile away and you say, do I really want to jump into this pool? But if you do, you just got to own it. Because groveling to people who you'll never reach just for what? I don't know. That definitely negates the whole alpha man content vibe just a little bit. But pressure situations like that, they reveal a lot. And maybe this is an opportunity for him to condition that aspect of himself for the next controversy, because it's not like he's going to lose his channel or anything, but the culture is not going to get much better, and skin's got to get thickened, and people have just got to be fucking ignored. Okay, that's it for tonight, but one more thing. I want to pay respects to somebody who died in my life recently. And her name is Sister Lise. She was my Sister Lise. She's a Salesian sister. She was my principal from kindergarten until 8th grade. And then when we moved on from 8th grade to high school, she moved on to a school down in Louisiana somewhere and whatever. And then she came back to the local area and became principal again. I don't know how long ago that was. It was like from 2020 until it might be in 2019 until 2023. I don't know when the hell it was, but she was back here recently. There's Sister Lise. I found out that she was sick, pancreas again. I found out she was sick not too long ago, and then it was just so quick she was gone. And she was somewhere in New Jersey whenever this all happened. But I wanted to say a few things about Sister Lise. First of all, from kindergarten until 8th grade, that's 1990 until about 1999, this woman right here would get on the intercom at my elementary school, and in the morning, there'd be a couple of announcements. We would say prayer together. And then she would sing God Bless America. She was French Canadian. Had the accent and everything. But man, did she love this country. And every morning, she would not only sing God Bless America over the intercom for the whole school with the intention of us singing along with her, she belted it. It was all or nothing every morning. There was another time in 1998 or something like that. It's 97, 98 or whatever. We were all living at my grandmother's house, and this house often has had some really catastrophic floods over the years. And one that I was there for in 8th grade or so, 7th or 8th grade, was really, really bad. Really bad. The entire basement filled up. It was like a scene out of, because it was a sloped driveway, so the driveway filled up. It crushed the garage door, and all this black water just surged in. It looked like a scene out of Titanic, and so much was lost. So much of my parents' stuff, a lot of furniture, everything. But, we lost computer equipment that we were using. We lost a printer, we all just hung out in the basement. That was a place for us to just do things and not bother anybody. It was a crowded house living with my grandmother in the 90s. And that was really devastating. But about a week later, I was in my grandmother's living room, and Anthony and I noticed a car rolling up to the front of our house that we didn't recognize. And then out of this van came the assistant principal and Sister Lise, our principal. Like, what is that, Sister Lise? What are they doing here? And they opened up the back hatch of the van, and they pulled out a couple of rifles. No, not. No, I had to crack a joke, or else I was going to get too emotional. They pulled out a couple of rifles. No, they pulled out a couple of beanbag chairs and a box and a few other things. I forgot what it was, but they came in. They knew that so much of our stuff was destroyed. They got us a few beanbag chairs to replace some of our, kid stuff downstairs, but also a new printer. And they just came by bearing gifts. It was a really devastating flood, and it was just I'll remember that for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. And I was so happy that she got to meet Aurora. She showed up on Aurora's day of her baptism. We got to the church where we just got there. We're waiting for Matt's cousin to show up, because Matt's cousin is the one who baptized Aurora. And while we were sitting there in the church all to ourselves, this church that I grew up in because it was attached to the school that she was the principal at. And so all of our assemblies would be in this church. And I'm sitting there, and, we're all just kind of milling around, just my family, waiting for things to get started. It was a really nice day. Actually, it was kind of a rainy day, but still, it was a nice day. It was exciting. And in comes Sister Lise, and it was so good to see her. We hugged each other, and she got to meet Aurora, and she was so excited to hear that she was getting baptized. And there's that. There was also something else here too. I want to just throw up onto the screen. Maybe last year or the year before, there was a pro-life channel or something like that was interviewing people at some convention or something about whether or not they're pro-life or pro-choice. And I did a double take, and I said, wait a second. Sister Lise and Sister Susan are right there up front. Take a look at this.
You guys pro-life, pro-choice?
There's Sister Lise right there. And to the left of Sister Lise is Sister Susan. Sister Susan and I had a little bit of a history. We ended up respecting each other at the end, I think. But I was just a bad boy in class. And I'd really like to talk to her as an adult. I hope I can see her again one day. But here they are quickly being asked whether or not they are pro-choice or pro-life, which is ridiculous. Hold on. Wait a second.
You guys pro-life, pro-choice, or somewhere in between?
We're pro-life. Pro-life.
We work with young people and want to bring them the fullness of life.
Would you say you're
There you go. There they were. I said, whoa. Where the hell are they? So, that's nice. They were probably rocking out to the very end. And so again, buon anima. And God bless Sister Lise. That's what I just want to put out there. Okay, well, that's it for me tonight. Again, go and use the Quite Frankly promo code on Keto Brainz anytime over the course of the weekend, and you're going to be in the raffle for something really swell. And I'll see how we can extend this beyond the weekend, because it's an extended weekend, and I'm sure somebody will forget or not get the message at all. But enjoy this rerun. It was a nice show, and I'm really appreciative of you all. Really appreciative. Oh wait, there's something that just came in from ST. Said I so much appreciate all the content you share with us, Frank. Chris was great. I was late. I need to watch from the beginning. Thank you very much for all you do. Well, ST, you're going to love tonight's show. It was interesting, and I've been waiting a long time to do it. And you're right, Chris Shelton was a great guest, and I can't wait to have him back on. All right, well, that's that. Be good, everybody. And if you can't be good, don't get caught.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Goodbye.
All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody.